My name's Brian Wendroff, and again, thank you to Professor Avrit for inviting me. I'm a CPA. We have a CPA, Certified Public Accountant. We have a CPA firm here in Arlington, Virginia, so right in a place called Shirlington, for some of you from coming out of town. And we provide accounting services, we provide tax service preparation, planning, budgeting, forecasting, and what you call almost like fractional CFO, certified financial officer, so an executive position in talking in the finance side. We've been here for 20 years, and that's actually how we kind of started out, going into technology and saying, hey, there's some opportunities here. This is right when, let's say, social media was starting to be something, and being able to market online was a thing. It was starting to be something that you could do versus knocking on someone's door to get a customer. So fast forward here 20 years, we've been really wanting to use technology since day one, and that's how we could maybe stand out in front of these competitors that are been in business for many, many more years than us. And I would say you asked about how do we get, what interests us in AI, and about what, it was about around COVID when we had to look internally in our own company and say, how do we continue to differentiate ourselves in this profession? The accounting profession is scarce in accountants. So anybody getting their accounting degree, you got plenty of hopefully work for you to come in front of you, because the profession's scarce. But as I talked to one of my most successful business owners, he goes, he hates numbers. So when he tells me that, he's good at what he does, but he hates numbers, so that gave us motivation to know that we have a job hopefully in front of us as well. But using technology and AI, we started getting so much involved in it because we started actually finding out how we internally can make our business better. We use automation, we use AI, and we definitely see that maybe another way, here's another way that we continue to improve the product, what we do, differentiate ourselves, and continue to learn how to provide a better experience for ourselves and for our customers and for ourselves.
Richard? Yeah. Good afternoon. I'm Rich Kauzlarich, a distinguished visiting professor at the Schar School, colleague of Alan. I always like to come to an event where Alan makes his presentation because he always has great visuals to go along with it. My background is a little unusual in the sense that I spent 32 years at the Department of State, including U.S. Ambassador to Azerbaijan and U.S. Ambassador to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and 10 years in the intelligence community as National Intelligence Officer for Europe. So I'm here teaching, among other things, a policy communications class for graduate students and electives. And that's going to start in about a month. And I will tell you, I am absolutely terrified about how I'm going to be engaging students on AI-related issues. Because, you know, AI to me is not artificial intelligence, it's anxiety inducements. And I find that not only are faculty anxious about how to deal with AI, but students are in particular. And we really, you know, one of our jobs as academics is to be very conscious of the changes that are going on, both professionally for these students, but just socially as well. So you know, coming at AI, you know, I'm a late learner, but I also see really the need to really think hard and fast about an environment that's changing so rapidly. And I know from a semester ago when I taught this course till now, there have been so many changes. You know, I don't want to say I have to start all over again. But it really is hard to keep on top, and yet if you don't, you're missing, I think, something. So that's kind of my entry into this.
Yeah, often don't want to change, you know, so they want to teach the courses the same way they've always taught. So this is one of the biggest challenges yet, I think, to get people to expand their knowledge. Okay.
My name is Beju Rao. I'm actually, I come from the corporate side. The corporate side, we have enterprise software which operationalizes explainable and governed AI along with semantic mappings. what we have done is we have taken that enterprise software and actually put it in the hands of students and workforce. And we take that pretty seriously, actually. I mean, even though our main business is enterprise software, we want to make sure that the students and the workforce, they have access to the same software and use cases which enterprises are solving. I mean, that does two things, right? One is for workforce, it kind of future-proofs their careers because they can learn AI, all the changes you have talked about, but they can get in front of it, in front of AI, outsmart AI. And for students, whether it's high school students or undergrads, they're learning AI as a skill, and it's good for corporations also because they become the pipeline, the career pipeline, the workforce pipeline for the enterprises. So that's what we are doing currently.
Hi, everyone. My name is Menon. I'm professor of Information Systems and Operations Management at Costello College of Business. I have previously held administrative positions like department chair and associate dean at the college. From a teaching point of view, I teach information security management and data mining for MBA. And a research point of view, I do a lot of analysis in health IT, health hospitals, with a lot of data, and also predictive analytics for prostate cancer and things like that. Also, what is interesting is a colleague of mine and I, we are doing what is known as a PrEP program, which is we are trying to connect. This is somewhat not really within the curriculum, but extracurricular or co-curricular, where we are connecting students to companies, and we have them work. We have a NIST, and we have the CCI, Virginia Commonwealth, and all these have been funding us so that we can pay students to work in these companies, and then we mentor them on a weekly basis, like in an agile method, rather than not a traditional internship where students just go off. And we think that is the way that we need to position our students. We need to start thinking about seriously upskilling our workforce in terms of the soft skills in that manner.
Okay, thank you. And Chris, would you like to see if our setup is working and tell us your interest? Yeah.
Sure. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in the conference today. My name is Chris Mammen. I'm the office managing partner in San Francisco for Womble Dickinson, a law firm. And I'm also co-founder of the firm's AI practice. And so, we've been focusing on this issue with a couple of different lenses. One is helping advise our clients on AI-related issues, and because my specialty is intellectual property, focusing in particular on copyrights, patents, and privacy and data security issues. But generally, this is a phenomenon unlike anything else where it's impacted all of our clients at the same time, whether they're large or small, traditionally technology or traditional brick and mortar. They all are sort of facing a similar set of issues at the same time. As part of these roles, also focusing on how it's going to change the business of law and how it is changing how we deliver legal services and how we train junior lawyers. I'm sure we'll get into a lot of those aspects, but all of those challenges are sort of hitting us simultaneously in the practice of law.
Okay, thank you. I'll just say a little bit more about myself. JP introduced me, but I wanted to say that I'm also involved here at George Mason with the Center for Assured Research and Engineering. We have a subgroup that we call Science and Technology, Ethics and Policy. So that's our focus. And that builds on my background of work with the ACM on the U.S. Technology Policy Committee. And then also my other hat is AI and ethics. I'm the co-editor-in-chief for the new journal. It's about 4 years old now. Sort of happened at just the right time. It's very getting a lot of business now. And also I was asked to write compile a AI and ethics handbook that's coming out in February by Springer. So that's to try to address AI opportunities and risks to a broad range of professionals. And so don't assume that you have or want to have be an expert in AI, but understand what the opportunities are and what can go wrong and what to look out for. So that's what I've been involved with for quite a while now, and that's my perspective today. And I would just say I would encourage on the ethics part to think about ways to, when you talk with people about how, we all hear people saying AI is bad or AI is good. What's the ethical explanation you have for that? There are different schools of thought, and it's nice to have that available when you talk with people in public. So I wonder if we could start with Chris on is the business of law any different from other industries in terms of AI's impact on the workforce? And if so, how? Would you like to comment on that?
Sure. Let me touch on two things there. The first one is the fact that the business of law has been for generations organized around the billable hour, and in the several decades that I've been practicing law, more and more of how we charge for our services has moved into billable hour and hourly rates, and progressively eliminated separate billing and separate line items for things like technology. And so I like to analogize that to the construction industry, where it's a time and materials way of organizing business. And as we move deeper and deeper into an AI-enabled service delivery model, a lot of the time that goes into that is going to be replaced by technology. And so we need to think about ways that the law practice may need to shift from this sort of construction industry modeled on a time and materials type model to something that's more like a technology company, where you've got a smaller group of experts, the more senior lawyers, the ones who have wisdom and trusted counselor type services to provide, supported by a substantial tech stack. And how we get from here to there, I don't know. That's a great puzzle. The second thing is our legal training is really focused around teaching students how to think like lawyers. And part of that happens in law school, and part of that happens during junior years in the practice of law through a lot of repetition and working through various kinds of tasks. And as those tasks are becoming increasingly replaced with AI, there's also a question of how students are going to, or young lawyers are going to progress from very smart and trained on the substance to a position of being that trusted advisor type role, where they have the wisdom that comes through, has traditionally come through rounds of repetition. And that's against the emerging body of research that suggests that significant use of AI can tend to suppress users' critical reasoning, exercise of critical reasoning skills. And so we need to figure out the right way to balance all of that.
I think I have sort of a related question for Brian about the profession, the impact on the profession. You're not law, but you probably deal with that. It's related, I think, to things that you do. Would you like to comment on what Chris was saying, how that maybe relates to your work?
Sure. Well, yeah, AI is part of our everyday process now. Anywhere from an intern, everywhere to myself, the managing partner of the company, an accounting firm. We're pretty technology bounded because we use accounting software, we use financial management software. Most, if not all of them, already have some AI embedded into them. So in a way, we have to get used to it because it's a tool, obviously, that just like all these other tools, and it's not that we have to and we want to. Again, we use it, we were thinking about it like, okay, we know, Professor, it's hard to be in front of change, but change is always gonna happen. There's a quote, what's that quote? I don't know if you ever heard it, you're done changing, you're done. And it's tough because it's hard to change, but we have to be aware of it and we wanna be aware of it. We're gonna be positive about it, we're gonna be optimistic about it and use it like a tool to be able to do what we do. There's a software, for example, called BlueJay, and we started using it. It's a tax research software. And this is starting to happen now more. We're starting to ask if there's AI involved in the software, or we're starting to look for tools that AI is embedded in or using. What this software is, it's OpenAI behind it with the Internal Revenue Code, laws around whatever type of tax, research, IRS, Cornell, just a lot of different specific tax resources that are in front of it, but behind it is OpenAI. And in one sense, I'm like, okay, let's just use ChatGPT to maybe do some research and make sure that we have the resources behind it to look for the credibility of it. But when I start looking at these specific softwares that someone spends a credible amount of time, I think what you said, like the past presenter said, training it, I'm starting to see the big differences of how useful this is even in front of ChatGPT. So we are, and I think a lot of businesses, law, I think accounting, I think a lot of businesses, professional services, have to think of ourselves like a software company. We have to think of ourselves like a research and development company. We have to keep testing stuff out and seeing how we use it. Of course, there's gonna have to be governance behind it, but we definitely are excited to be able to actually test these different softwares out, different tools out, to see if we keep it and continue to use it for however long we can keep it. It makes use of for our customers and ourselves, or until we have to move on to another and shift to another tool that's going to continue to provide a better customer experience and help us internally.
And so I was interested in you and Chris saying about the students that are graduating and coming into your companies. What's missing now? What would you like to see us produce?
Well, first of all, you're doing a great job. Probably about a fourth of our staff are from George Mason.
Okay.
So thank you. I applaud the George Mason University I'm a George Mason alumni. I'm a George Mason product, so thank you very much for the education I got.
I didn't ask just so you could plug George Mason, but anyway, that's
okay.
Nice. It's nice to hear that.
Okay, no, I just wanted to because we're here, but thank you.
Yeah.
But as of what the students were looking for, like, I'm sorry, what's your name, sir? Mr. Nurup, there's no doubt the soft skills need to be there. The technology there, but the soft skills, the ability to be able to be, I think a lot of what we hear in school from students is build your network, or try to think about who you have in your network, build your resources, learn the soft skills. Because right now we're looking at, if we hire an intern, we're gonna try to push as much stuff as we can to that intern right now, because we know ourselves that we as let's say people who have experience in the profession have to be better to communicate, have to have the capacity to call up that customer, the capacity to communicate with the customer, get on the phone, whatever we need to do to be able to provide the product we have, like let's say an accounting, let's say set of financial statements to help them make better decisions. And that's what, it's obvious, like our customers are looking for that. So The quicker we can get these individuals trained all the way from starting in college, where they're going to be doing advisory, they're going to have to do speeches, they're going to have to go up here and talk. I wish you continue to do that, because that's going to be, no doubt, they're going to get out of the comfort zone. But that's what it is. That's change, and that's growing.
Mm-hmm. Chris, what's your experience with new graduates?
So, you know, the new graduates are experiencing AI, the AI boom in real time as we have. They've been students while this has happened. I think the greatest concern is, you know, making sure that they have those skill sets, or on the path to developing those skill sets that we associate with trusted advisors. You know, as Brian said, you know, the oral advocacy, the physical presence in front of clients, but also really critical reasoning and the ability to nimbly engage with this technology, but then also, you know, not stop with it. You know, there are, you know, increasing fear. The greatest area that seems to get press in connection with law practice and AI is the growing proliferation of briefs that are filed with hallucinated case citations, and lawyers are getting sanctioned for that. And you know, how we used to work is delegate within the firm and have the junior lawyers do the research and the write-up. You know, it's sort of gradually, you know, progressively reviewed by the senior lawyer and signed off. But the senior lawyer doesn't go look up every case. That's delegated to somebody else. Increasingly, judges are saying whoever's name shows up at the bottom of the brief now has a duty to go pull up and read every single one of those cases. And that's, you know, that reflects a disruption in the status quo about the trust in the existing workflows. And so we need junior lawyers who will be responsible in that critical reasoning and use of these tools, even as they understand how to use them to make their work more efficient.
Okay, thank you. Bijou, would you have, along these lines, some comments you could make about what's needed for students coming out of colleges?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, AI is a tool, and the more these interns and students practice with that tool on different use cases, more they learn, right? There are 3 or 4 levels of learning, I think. One is, you know, obviously, you know, these students, they have studied other subjects like, you know, science subjects, so they can relate how AI works to mathematics and physics, and depending on the domain, right? If it's a physics problem, they should be able to see how AI is solving that problem. And not only that, they have to actually identify cases where AI is failing or doing it differently. Sometimes a different way of solving the problem is also right? So they're not only becoming used to AI, but they are outsmarting AI in some sense, and they are becoming smarter. That is a valuable skill for all these employers, right? So that's number one. Number 2 is domain specific. If it's a law, probably interns in that area should focus on that domain, right? So that's another level of learning. And then third and last level of learning is ability to use it more effectively, right? I mean, yes, you can understand how the tool is working, you have practiced it, but can you effectively use it and present AI solution to others, whether it's a judge or whether it's a senior accountant? I think these are the 3 levels, and the last level is kind of a user. It's not just interns, but also I think all of us have to learn that. You know, can we effectively use AI, and how can we do that? And in the process, make AI itself better, right? So.
So Nirup, I'm saving this question now for you. Based on what we've heard here, do you think there's going to be fewer jobs for the people we've talked about so far because of AI? Okay.
I don't think so, because we will have, in fact, probably more tasks to do, but everyone has to watch out for changes in the nature of the roles, so kind of be prepared for that and adapt to that. So I honestly think actually we will have more to do with AI, because it's a tool which can increase the efficiency, which can increase the revenues, which can improve the compliance, which can decrease the risk, and all these things. And that, to me, is kind of, there is no limit, right? I mean, there is no limit to efficiency improvement. There is no limit to revenue improvements. There is no limit to compliance improvements, right? So for that reason, I don't think it will decrease the number of jobs, but it will change the mix of jobs.
Okay.
So Larry, can I just add?
Yeah, please.
To supporting Beju's position, actually is supported by the Nobel laureate Darren Acemoglu, who at MIT, who found that basically, in most companies, the lower skill people will be replaced quite a bit. He found that, and he also found that, he and his co-authors found that the higher skill, and not only is the lower skill people getting replaced, but the wage difference between the lowest person and the higher people is increasing because of AI implementation in some of these companies. So,
yeah, so far we've been talking about lawyers, accountants, that area. But what about, that's what you brought up then is another issue. What about other jobs that are maybe not professional jobs? So, would you like to comment on that too? Yeah.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this, and the challenge of keeping up with AI and what it's likely to do, is a never-ending battle. And when going into my next semester with my students, I'm going to pick up on a thought that Jeff Bezos had. And this is 5 years ago, maybe he's thinking differently now. And he said he often gets the question of what's going to change over the next 10 years? And he said, I never get the question of what's going to stay the same. And I think that the idea of making sure that students going into the workforce understand, back to the basic point of critical thinking, understand about ethics, understand about responsibility for the information that they're providing, and most importantly, basic communication skills, not just writing, but being able to present to a senior policymaker in 3.5 minutes what are the essence of the decisions that person is going to have to make, and be prepared to answer the question, so what? I think those fit in that category of soft skills, and that's where the AI piece fits in. So that you have them ask themselves, okay, how can I use AI to enhance my ability to make a oral briefing, ability to analyze the problem, ability to think if this is right or wrong, and to ask that basic question that I've heard around these tables over the last couple of days, what are you trying to do? What's your basic question before you, as you begin this process, whether you use AI or not? And that's kind of where I'm at now, rather than trying to make them all AI experts, but to make them see this as an element in their toolkit that they will need, whatever position they're going to be playing. But to me, the most the most important question out there is the ethical one.
Actually, I want to add to that. I know you're talking about your course. It's probably a graduate level course, right?
Graduate.
So I'm on the committee for Virginia's, it's called CET, CTE, Career and Technology Education. It's for high schoolers. So I'm on the committee to set up a curriculum, AI curriculum for these high school students. And I would like to add that ethics module to that because it's never too early to learn that, right? So.
Oh, and as Amarda Shehu was saying yesterday at the panel, that at GMU we have started an AI course at the undergrad level, which is required for everybody. And it is not really about the technology, but it's more the responsible use of it.
Chris, do you have anything to add to this? Or?
I think there's a lot of wisdom in what everybody's had to say. Two specific thoughts. One, in talking about ethics, I of course apply the lens of legal ethics and our obligations under the rules of professional conduct. And one of those rules, the duty of competence, requires that we stay abreast of developments in the technology and be aware of both the benefits and the risks of technology. And so there's a good argument that ethics involves not just avoiding doing bad things with this technology or avoiding cheating with this technology, but also the duty to our clients to embrace the technology in the ways that are going to enhance our service delivery. Another comment is thinking about the structure of education and legal education. I think there's an argument that the Socratic method that was developed at Harvard in the late 1800s was really an innovation that allowed sort of the mass production of tutorial type one-on-one questioning in a large classroom. And it has worked pretty well across over a century in terms of developing evolving ways of interacting, but we may need to think about moving back to more individualized kinds of pedagogy in order to short circuit the ways that students can use or misuse AI in sort of larger or less personal settings.
Okay, thank you. Rich, you have something?
No, I was just going to say that applies as much to the teacher/instructor because you really have to approach students and the material in a different way than we've been taught to teach. And it does require more work. It requires more of an, as you say, more of an emphasis on the one-on-one dimension, and to do it at a time when there are going to be fewer resources for budgetary reasons, for universities to do that. And there are faculty members who basically say, if I've got to change the way I'm teaching, I'm not going to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say that's a majority view, and it may not be true in the Costello
I'd like to know.
school.
Yeah. It'd be good to know.
But I can tell you from the public policy point of view, there's a lot of resistance to what has to happen because they would prefer to fall back on, this tried and true Socratic method that they were raised in to get their PhDs to begin with. And that, to me, I think that's one of the biggest challenges.
Well, if we could move to the general student population and also citizens, one of the dangers of using the generative AI models is that you take whatever comes out and just use it. But we need people to be critical of what comes out, to know something about the subject matter so they know if it's correct or not. How does that fit in then with our undergraduate education especially, or graduate? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there are two aspects there. There are technology aspects like retrieval augmented generation and context engineering, which limits the scope with which AI outputs the answer, right, within which the boundaries. That is continuously evolving, but by nature, as we all know, hallucinations are not driven to zero by nature of the LLM. So critical thinking, which was mentioned earlier by Chris, I think that's like a trait which is useful, forever, right? Mm-hmm. So critical thinking, outsmarting the AI, that's a second dimension, and that's what we teach, at least. Even high school students also, that's what we teach. Mm-hmm. Don't just take it. And prompt engineering itself is evolving continuously. So try to use more robust technology, plus augment it with your critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that the competition between these, for example, LLM agents, all the different companies, hopefully will differentiate the wheat from the chaff. In terms of if some LLM is prone to more hallucination or more, it's not going to become a lemons market where everything is lemon and people don't trust anything. I'm hoping, but I think we need a judicious amount of not just industry oversight, but perhaps some kind of regulation, but I'm not sure what. Mm-hmm. It's an evolving thing.
I was going to say, talking about the, like you said, what comes out of it. I mean, we got to embed this into our process. It's kind of just like cooking a hamburger, like if you're at McDonald's or something. There's a process to it, and you go with that process. So, but there's a process that McDonald's has created. So there's rules on how you cook the burger. You just don't cook the burger the way you want. So I say that about just like using, let's say, something like ChatGPT or some AI. We almost use that like 80-20 rule, where maybe 80% of it's good and useful, but you got to, that 20% is the most important part, potentially more than the 80%, or they're both equally important. Of that, that's the you part, that's the personality, the persona. That's everything about like how you really got to create that honesty to it, the ethical pieces to it, the critical thinking. But yeah, like I wouldn't say that we run away from it and go like it's not, like you said, it's not. Oh, we're just going to get something that's hallucinations or fake. Obviously, we know that's not true. So that if we know it's not true, the quicker we find out that's not true, and we understand that it's not 100%, it's a tool. You still got to use the tool. You still got to loop in yourself to the tool. I think that is going to be really important. Professor, I think it's going to be important for you, because I think it's going to have to go with all these different individuals who are so new to using it, someone who has much experience, someone who has no experience and they're just new to the world. There's kids, my little kid uses it, my 7-year-old uses it. So in a way that, I'm with him when he's using it. So I think we gotta, there's definitely some, obviously there's gonna be, we trust it. Obviously we trust it because we're having this conference right now, and then how do we put that 20% to me into the piece, and that's us.
I think one thing that we're going to have to do more is to proactively take AI and integrate it into what we normally would ask students to do in terms of developing these critical thinking skills. Not say we're going to use AI in this course. We're not going to talk about guidelines or guide rails. We're going to have a project where you're going to be using it, I'm going to be using it, and we're going to decide, is this really an effective tool to accomplish what you want to accomplish in terms of your public policy?
So just one thing I wanted to add to this is that I don't know what the percentages are, but I've had people tell me that I'm unethical if I use ChatGPT in any way. And it may be more people than you think that feel that way. What do you do with them?
I mean, you do have faculty who'll just say, okay, you can use Grammarly or whatever the Microsoft equivalent is to check your papers.
Well, even Googling now,
Yeah.
you can't avoid the.
But, you know, look at the capabilities too that this can bring to your thinking process and your, you know, I'm in the presentation of information business, but it makes your presentations much more effective than if you were left on your own to develop. And that's kind of the tool part that really needs to be emphasized.
Yeah, I think the idea of sort of competition, you know, having good products is maybe more important. I had one colleague said he can tell if somebody used GPT because it's so good to read, you know.
I mean, for me personally, it is, you know, I use ChatGPT all the time, but I use it with kind of self-awareness, right? In the sense that, you know, am I overusing it or am I using it at the right proportion? As long as, you know, individual has that self-awareness, I think it's perfectly all right.
Yeah, I mean, and I just want to, maybe this is a tangential, but I want to talk about assessments. It has become no more take-home exams. It's all in-class exams because you take home, you know, it comes back with ChatGPT output, and then you can't penalize them because any tool that recognizes ChatGPT output is only 85% correct. So it is not legally, I mean, you can't take it as an honor code violation. So then, you know, then why bother with out-of-class assessments, just do them in class. So I had to pivot a lot.
Yeah, and I want to just I'm truly trying to understand who would ask you this or say this, because like how many people use ChatGPT for personal reasons other than professional reasons? If I raise a hand. So about half of you. I mean, I use literally ChatGPT every day of the week for personal reasons. I mean, I could give you a story every day the last 6 days how I've used ChatGPT. First of all, my father-in-law, his Apple phone wasn't working. I don't know much about Apple phone. I have an Android phone. I looked up on ChatGPT, I hold the button like this, and all of a sudden it's working again. I kid you not. Like, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been doing accounting work for 20 years, and earlier this summer I was like a little bit unstimulated, unchallenged, because I have a great team, and we're doing good, and we're moving forward as the best we can. And I bought a grill, a smoker. It's called a smoker. Does anybody know what a Traeger is? I see a gentleman says what a Traeger is. It's a smoking grill. You can cook on it and smoke food on it. And I kid you not, I feel like I don't cook that much. I rarely cooked. I cooked once in a while, but I feel like I'm actually a good cook because I use a Traeger, which has what it does is it smokes and it connects to your phone. So you can see how long what the temperature of the food internally, like meat, that's very important, right? To know how much internally the meat is cooked in, and then how much the temperature of the grill is. I use the phone to help me understand what these temperatures are, because I could be at work, literally here, my home, somewhere there, and I could tell my father-in-law or even my kid, because they have it on their app as well, to go, hey, the food's ready, go take it out of the grill. Because this thing doesn't cook for 30 minutes when you smoke something. When you smoke something, it take 15, 20 hours to smoke something. So you can imagine you sleep overnight with this thing and it's still cooking while you're sleeping. It's still working while you're sleeping. But what I wanted to say is I use that and ChatGPT, and I kid you not, I made a lot of people happy in my family because even my in-laws who live with us, I bring them food that I cooked out of this Traeger using ChatGPT, using this phone, and I feel like even myself, I'm even say myself, I feel like I'm a good cook so with some of the new things I've learned.
Yeah, that's a great testimonial.
So maybe I could sort of take that example of sort of the hybrid human AI efforts and take it from cooking to law practice. You know, one of the things that's often quite useful is to take a finished brief. Say, I'm ready to file this brief. I run it through the AI and I say, please evaluate the arguments. Tell me if there are any gaps in the arguments, any unsupported premises, anything that needs to be improved. And it comes out with a list of suggestions. And there may be, let's say there are 10 suggestions and 6 of them are not terribly good. But 2 or 3 are really good and a couple are worth considering. So, you know, that makes the written work product better. It makes the cooked food better. it encourages the use of critical thinking because you got to look at these suggestions and evaluate them and think about how they make the arguments stronger. And it also drives home the ways in which AI is not always an improvement. Sometimes it misses the mark, and so you can continue to learn how to spot those.
Okay.
I had two questions specific to for Chris, but they're related to what we've been discussing. So the first is on Chris has a PhD in philosophy from University of Oxford, and so Oxford has a tutor system, which is really quite individualized. So Chris's experience with that, in reference to his mention and others of moving back towards this more personalized system. And then Chris is a world expert on intellectual property and patents. And so the use of AI for patent search or patent writing or identifying gaps in patents so you can develop a layer of patents to strengthen a company's patent position. So how are you seeing those develop in your practice or more in general?
Great. Two great questions. Yeah, the first question about the importance of the role of the tutorial system in education. Unfortunately, as a graduate student at Oxford, I mostly had the opportunity to sit alone in the library and work on my dissertation with limited tutorials. But having seen had a little bit of the benefit of that and seen how much benefit the undergraduates get from that. It's a tremendously labor-intensive form of education, but also tremendously productive. And so I think the challenge is to figure out ways to adapt the best of that education system with the technology in order to produce the kinds of outcomes that we're looking for. I don't know whether it's apocryphal or not, but it's received wisdom that the tutorial system at Oxford and Cambridge was initially established as during the Age of Empire, when the universities were trying to teach people to go out into the world, into far-flung places, and be able to rapidly take in disparate amounts of information and digest them and prepare reports to send back to the UK. So there's some very particular things about the historical context in which the educational system was set up, and I think we have an opportunity to do that here as well. The second question about AI and IP, it's a little bit of a dangerous question because I could go on all afternoon with the many interesting things that are happening in that space. There are ways that it is speeding up and making more efficient some of the inefficiencies in the system. Some of those inefficiencies may have been there by design, some friction in the system in order to sort of make it operate in sort of a equilibrium kind of manner, and it can be quite disruptive. Thinking, for example, of determining whether or not an invention is obvious for patentability purposes, and whether a person of ordinary skill in the art would think to combine one or two or more references that are published to come up with the elements of some claimed invention. Well, a person of ordinary skill in the art has just normal limitations of human knowledge and human awareness. If you start replacing that person of ordinary skill in the art with ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, all of a sudden you have something closer to omniscience about the entirety of human knowledge and the ability to combine things from that. What does that do to the standard and the sort of human limited standard for obviousness? There are many questions like that, but I'll pause there.
Okay, thank you.
You related to that, you were there in August 2024 when one of the students presented at that SLED conference at Caresoft, right? One of the students, his dad actually works for a pharma company. They invent the molecules, and he laid out an algorithm to see if a new molecule is patentable or not, right? So you can use AI to actually, in the patenting space, to quickly discover whether your invention is valuable as you think or not, right? So that was.
So I'd like to see if there are questions in the audience that anybody would. Mm-hmm.
There's a number of new businesses. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yes, hello. I was waiting for this time, honestly, because this is such an important topic that I'm wondering why half of the room is empty. Education and workforce development should be a priority. It's a very critical issue. I've done research, deep dive into research. My background is I have a doctoral in global education, and I focus on lifelong learning. As Nirup mentioned earlier, the only person that mentioned it, by the way, lifelong learning, aging, that it was mentioned in the previous panel on public health, the importance of mental health. Now, there is importance of creating mechanisms now for the future, thinking about the older population. Because when we talk about AI, it seems to me that everything is assumed that the population targeted is the youth population, and that is a major mistake. We must concentrate and focus on the older population too, which is, by the way, as you didn't know, is the largest aging population in the world right now, today, and we have to take it as priority. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to also add that we are going to face an there's the huge amount of stresses on the education system. It's not AI related specifically, JP, but we have an enrollment cliff coming, at least in the US, in the sense that the number of kids being born, number of kids graduating from high school, all that is declining. So a lot of universities are under pressure, to somehow fill seats in the next 5 to 10 years. And with the nationalistic pride, immigration restrictions, and all that, we are trying to do the 3+1 kind of models. Costello is trying, GMU is trying, where for 1 year someone can come here, but that's it. Then they have to go back home. So then lifelong learning definitely makes sense because of the reskilling and upskilling that we have to work with the aging population.
Rich?
I'm going to say, I'm glad you raised that, because last semester, in addition to the class I taught on energy in a turbulent world, at the graduate level, I taught a 4-unit course on the move to transactional diplomacy, to the Encore Learning Program here in Arlington County. Had about 50 people in that category of the population that you're talking about. An extraordinary interest, very open-minded, I must say, because we used AI. My colleague Bill Taylor and I ran the course, but we used AI to help structure the course. But the most important part was the engagement with the students, much more willing than my graduate students to talk and to criticize and to sort of say, yeah, I kind of get what good can come out of this. But I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we do need to think more about particularly AI applications for that population, of which I'm a proud member.
I was going to ask two quick questions. One on disclosure. So Alan Shark described his syllabus and requiring the students to disclose where and how they use AI with the prompt. But in professional services, such as legal profession or accounting profession, what are the disclosure requirements that you all face, but both requirements or professional ethics? And then a second question is on industry evolution. So a number of startups, for example, Harvey AI, which has a quite large valuation in the legal profession. There's a number of startups in the accounting profession to provide these types of services. So how do you see your industries evolving and the relationship between and where the competition is for these firms, whether it's the existing small firms? I mean, it's certainly not the very large, highly expertise firms, but for both of you in legal and accounting. And then in education, too, for Nirup and Beju and Professor Kauzlarich. So Chris, so the disclosure and the industry evolution that you see with this.
Yeah. Again, two great questions. There are a number of different vectors at which we are encountering the disclosure requirements. The first one I'll mention is that in response to many of these highly publicized stories about briefs being filed with hallucinated case sites, judges around the country have adopted standing orders in their courts relating to disclosure, and they are not at all consistent. Some courts say, look, at the end of the day, you're an officer of the court, and however you get to whatever it is you file with this court, you're under an ethical obligation to make sure it's done right and there's nothing false or misleading in it, and it's on you if that doesn't happen. At the other end of the spectrum, some courts have said absolute prohibition on anything that uses AI or anything that uses AI in legal research. And for every brief you file, you have to add a signed sworn certification that you didn't use any AI in the preparation of that brief. So there's a wide variety of reactions. The solution to that is you just got to read the rules for the judge you're in front of in litigating. Another part is clients are putting it in their outside counsel guidelines. Some are, again, absolutely prohibiting. Some are requiring that it be used in order to make legal services more efficient. And so we have to navigate on a client-by-client basis what those expectations are. Industry evolution is pointing in a whole lot of different directions, but I'll pause and let others address the first question.
Right.
Well, yeah, this is a great question. We want to know ourselves about disclosure, but we actually just recently, we prepare as the new year, we send customers as an engagement letter. I'm sure Chris has to send the same thing, like some type of engagement letter, but we are now incorporating that into our engagement letter to explain that we're going to be using AI. The customer then can kind of decide what to do from there. But that's actually from our insurance company that's helped us do that. So that's usually who we go to a lot of times to kind of see how we kind of refine some of the communication, some of the contracts we have with our customers. So they are putting that, they're telling us, hey, let's put that in there, I agree. We have phone calls, this is a great thing, we're doing this today. We rarely do this, right? Meet in person. So we do a lot of calls virtually, just like Chris, right? And we record the calls, so we're gonna start putting something there in our engagement letter because those calls are precious, recording those calls. They're precious. I can't write all those notes. I just want to, we just talk about how it is to be an advisor and all that. Like, a lot of times you can't write, and I just want to listen. I want to see body language. And you can get a lot from all that, right? That's where AI can do that too, but yeah, a lot of that body language. So being able to have those notes taken and just be able to kind of look at that later and let it get, use AI to be able to kind of give us concrete set the things, information to look at. It's so incredible, so incredible. So we're going to put that in our engagement letter. So that answers your question. But as of, let's say, what we're governed by, the AICPA, Internal Revenue Code, they're not really saying anything right now that we have any type of requirements. Maybe something about the FASB, which it was talking about publicly traded companies that used financial disclosures. Maybe there's something involved there, but we're not really involved in that area. The other part, though, I think you asked is like professors. I think you said relating to how we're going to continue, like how the industry is changing.
The industry evolution with large firms and small firms and AI firms doing accounting and law.
Well, I'll tell you something. As a smaller firm, we can be more, we can pivot quicker. So a larger firm has to really look at all the tools and kind of take more time and how they're going to push it across the company. So I think we got to take, as a smaller organizations, startup. I mean, how can I say this? Two things. One is to answer your question as of like being able to use AI in what we do and be able to do it pretty quickly and use it as a tool, embed it, like you're saying, Professor, into our workflow is super powerful. When I interview someone for a job, I'm like, how are you using AI? That question wasn't asked 2 years ago. I don't not ask that question because I want to know, first of all, they're using it, how they're using it. And then every time I go do this research, I'm no longer saying go look at Thomson Reuters, right? Big organizations, all these bigger research organizations. I'm saying go look at ChatGPT and then find the resources behind that, which it usually provides, and then go from there. Look at your sources. So we're definitely involving that into our process every single day. And the other part I was going to say was, if I was someone starting a company right now, I mean, it's incredible how useful it is for a sole proprietor that doesn't have that partner to talk to and that resource. I think it's an incredible thing. And I mean, we can talk about working globally as well as a sole proprietor now and working together in that way too. The technology is so, I think it's incredible how from all places, all sizes, someone's going to be able to use it.
I think, from a disclosure point of view, it's an ethical thing, it's a safety practice. The current Virginia administration, they have EVO 30, which is how to use safe AI in education is part of that. I think schools are, I don't teach in schools. I teach my software to high school students, right? So it's a different teaching environment, but I follow the same principle. That's what Richard also said. It's okay to use AI, but declare it, so that's important, right? But also, what benefit you gain by using it, right? Plus, if a student is using it to generate software code, perhaps the question should be, does it have any vulnerabilities? Not whether the student used ChatGPT or not, or code generator or not. Question is, what are the vulnerabilities? Does it work in production, right? So I think, to me, that is kind of safe and ethical use of AI. Yeah.
Disclosure at the university. Yeah, so the university has basically told us, explain in your syllabus how much you permit students to use AI and how they should disclose it and so on. So I basically let them use AI for anything. I mean, when I say AI, I mean LLMs, Gen AI. And then in terms of our research, I know that most of the journals that we submit articles to, they have this list of things where they say, I have used Gen AI for grammar. I've used Gen AI to write paragraphs. I've used Gen AI to analyze the data. So you have to check all of those. Typically, I don't think journals have pushed back anybody saying that, oh, you use Gen AI for everything, we reject your paper. Because if they start doing that, then people won't be truthful about what they use Gen AI for. So right now they are permitting, they just want a disclosure of how you used it, and then they still publish your paper.
If I could circle back then to the industry evolution question in the context of law practice, some of the themes that we've heard have to do with smaller companies can be more nimble in terms of pivoting as the technology evolves. There's a countervailing issue, which is just the volume of resources, and the largest law firms have vastly more resources available than law firms below a certain threshold in size, and so there is a risk of a digital divide opening up based on just the ability to deploy resources. At the same time, law remains a sort of a cash-based practice, and is not. There's no capital investment from outside investors, and so that limits the ability to invest in development of technologies compared with private companies and other things. And so, I mentioned earlier that it points in a whole lot of directions. Those are some of them, and then the last one is that because we're stuck in the billable hour model, adoption of AI is perceived as, and may or may not be, a threat to revenue streams, and may involve cannibalizing our own revenue streams in a fairly explicit way in order to get over that hump. And so that has provided a psychological barrier, and perhaps an actual economic barrier to further adoption when it's in resource scarce, in situations where there's a scarcity of resources.
Thank
you. Any other questions from the audience? I want to say again, I appreciate Richard, I did, and others, the comment that we had before about the lifelong learning. And if you look at the data, most of the people at risk of losing their jobs are not the people right out of college, but there's sort of three bands, like through age 25 or something, and then 25 to 50, and then 50 and above. And the solutions are different, so if you're 55 and you've been working someplace for a while and you're losing your job, you're not going to go back and get a 4-year degree. So if there's capacity in the universities, why don't they have certificates and other programs for older learners? And then what's the responsibility of the corporations to look after the people that they're removing jobs for? I think some are. I mean, I've heard of really good programs in companies to prepare people for losing their jobs or staying in the company with new jobs. Any comments on that?
I think, companies have to step back a little bit and think from a longer-term perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Because every generation, every age group, every demographic has to offer certain insights and wisdom. And I think their insights and their knowledge can be beneficial in training the AI systems itself. In some sense, they're more valuable than not, right? Mm-hmm. So that is one thing. The other thing is, which kind of bothers me quite a bit, is maybe you guys have an answer, is are we going to lose our handle on fundamentals? Because I come from math, physics, chemistry kind of background, right? So I have solved mathematical theorems through logic and everything. So how do we continue to maintain that edge, the basic science edge, to do better going forward with AI than without AI. But how can AI not cannibalize that knowledge, right? The basic knowledge. So that's kind of my concern. So.
I'm happy to chime in on an aspect of lifelong learning, which is what we see among people who are in the law firm is that there's not a generational divide where the youngsters are the power users for AI, and the more senior you get, the less you use it. It's actually seems to be fairly evenly distributed across age groups and seniorities. At the same time, then what that means is that there are challenges in driving adoption across the organization, not merely to help the early adopters lean into using this technology, but how do we get that person who prefers not to use their computer at all to experiment with AI and to lean into that, and to discover ways that they can improve their practice by using this, and whether that's a junior lawyer or somebody senior or a member of staff, it's part of the teaching process and the change management education process to drive institutional change.
Let me just add to that. I mean, one of the things we saw during my time in the intelligence community is that you would have the senior analysts and the junior analysts kind of in two different worlds. And if there's a way, we haven't talked much about team building, but that's a skill that I think students need to understand from our classrooms. But I would think in a law firm like that, if there would be a way of teaming the more experienced person with the less experienced person, that may help overcome some of the. It's hard to do. I mean, but I think in some cases it's certainly worth it to see how you put the two ends of the demographic together.
So while my comment is not directly related to lifelong learning, I just want to bring our attention to the AI divide. I mean, we are the fortunate few. We live in a nice county where all our kids get laptops. There are a lot of counties around the country where that doesn't happen. And even though many of them may have cell phones in their fingertips, they may not have access to AI the way we have. So there's a growing AI divide, just like we had a digital divide. These divides are there, and maybe one of the things that we should focus as a society is try to make those divides go away.
So thank you very much, and perhaps each of you, including Larry, can make a closing comment about the topic.
Okay, so I've in the last several minutes, expressed some of my views about the populations in the country, and it's a large number that don't have. I appreciate your remarks just now. Don't have the privileges that we do, and it could be a very large number of people who are unemployed. Now, it's common to say, well, AI will produce more jobs than are killed, but we don't know that. And so what's plan B if we have millions of people out of work and they can't buy the products that we're forcing them to choose from? So that's just my negative vote. But I'll say one thing, too, is that I appreciate the therapy today. I don't have to worry if somebody says I'm unethical for using ChatGPT.
So the backstory to this is that Larry is the co-founder and one of the lead editors of the AI and Ethics Journal for Springer. And so that's the context.
Yeah, thanks. Brian, you want to go next? Or?
Yeah, Larry, if anybody knows it, you're not right. You're writing the book about it. Let me see. I would first of all, this is a great event. I'm so glad to just be with the other speakers and everybody here. This is a tool. I remember giving a presentation on this a couple years ago. The word relevance. This is what it is to be relevant. And I'll talk about fundamentals. I think fundamentals are always here. We can talk about fundamentals of a lot of things, right? We can go back, talk about the Bible here. There's fundamentals here. And I remember just saying in the presentation, you got to be relevant. And what does that mean? You got to be aware. You got to be present. There's so many things. There's therapy involved here. You got to be curious. You got to be open-minded. So I think that can't ever lead anybody, like you said, sir, to be that lifelong learning. I think the lifelong learner is, let's forget AI, forget everything else. It's lifelong learning, and how do we keep that engine going through until the next time?
Rich?
Well, I just think we have to take the tool and use it. And, don't talk about it, use it. And it either works or it doesn't, and you move on. But I still think there are these, go back to Bezos, there are these key skills, whether you're talking about lifelong learning or high school students or university students, that you're going to want our society to have. And so we got to, let's keep our eyes focused on that prize and then say, all right, where can AI come in to help, advance the thought process, the communications process, the societal process?
I think for me, it's all about AI literacy at different levels, right? So the builders and developers, they need to tie it back to the fundamental values as well as fundamental technologies. And users need to tie it back to the fundamental users, making the tools themselves better, helping to make the tools better. But aging population, probably we all need to help as governments across the world start using for citizen services. We should help the adoption. We should handhold them. So AI literacy at different levels is what I think will happen.
Yeah.
And I echo the sentiments of my fellow panelists that AI is an exciting tool. We should embrace it. We should use it as much as we can. We should try to innovate, come up with interesting agentic AI agents that can help with all kinds of our tasks. Of course, the more exciting thing is, especially for the legal people, will be when autonomous AI start making decisions and start affecting workflows, start affecting people's lives, start affecting the health care of some people. Then what do we do? But those are exciting times.
Yeah. So Chris is going to have the last word, but I wanted to say the next to last is that we should do a panel on what is AI anyway, or maybe a short panel on what isn't AI. So Chris.
Well, so Nirup's comments were a perfect lead-in to what I was going to close with, which is sort of this question of whether AI is going to lead to fewer lawyers overall and less legal work overall. And I think that it's not going to. There's going to be all these kinds of new questions that are going to come up. There are all kinds of new regulations or debates about regulations and compliance concerns that we're going to need to address. And there's a lot of things that we just haven't been able to do as lawyers because they're not cost effective for our clients. It's just too expensive for the benefit. And a lot of those things are going to become possible to do now, possible to consider. And I think that creates some exciting opportunities if we can get over the hump of delivering services like a carpentry shop.
Okay. Well, a warm round of applause for a wonderful panel. Many thanks, Larry, for coordinating. Many thanks, Chris, for joining from California, and Brian from being an alum and leading an accounting firm, Ambassador Kauzlarich, Bijou, and Nirup. So thank you all.